Hey, so this is just going to be the first of many things that I have decided to put out there into the world. I haven't before because I don't really think that anybody cares to listen. I can teach people how to do things really easily, but
While I'm editing this, I'm realizing how annoying that background noise is, so I apologize. I promise, as we get into the video more, the background noise is not as loud or annoying. So bear with me. I just want to get this out there, and I'll refine how I create the space to record these in the future.
I want to start with this idea. I have tried to start recording a couple of times, and I realize it's never going to be perfect. I decided to come outside. And in fact, in coming outside, I think that's part of what's going to help me do this. I think I need to sort of like realign myself with nature, and that'll help get me in the right space. And it's a really crisp, cool day today. Um, my sons decided to come with me outside. Anyway, there's these archetypes in my life, whether it be archetypes of characters or archetypes of things. It's how I make sense of everything. I'd like to document all of those things. I think by the time I get around to writing a memoir, I'll probably have Alzheimer's and won't remember how I got there. So I might as well share the information while I have it in my head. But anyway, one of these archetypes is the spiral. And again, I'll go into that in another video, but it has to do with, just this continual growth pattern. And, at the end of every level, there's like a big boss, like a video game. And so it's insane how I'm always surprised when I come to one of these big bosses in the spiral. A while back, I remember saying to myself that I needed to stay paying attention to it so that I wouldn't have to putz around so much when a big when a big boss came into my life. But here we are again. For the past maybe 2, 3 months, the universe has really been trying to tell me, and now the signs are coming in like fast and furious. And every time this happens, when I realize what it is and the connection that I've been missing, I have to laugh because then I start seeing it. I'm like, oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Oh, yeah, and that, yeah, of course. So here it is. Growing up, and especially in my teens and early 20s, I was heavily into the woo. Um, like angels and spirit guides and indigo children. I still kind of hold that in my head that I'm an indigo child. I've learned not to say that out loud though. Get on more into that later. Uh, I read up on protecting your psychic energy and strengthening your intuition. There's still, like I said, there's still a lot of that I actually still hold true today. But it's tempered or tempered. It's like steel that you've like heated and solidified with reality. I'm just gonna have to be okay with if my son is his voice is showing up in the background because I love him. Anyway, um, even in high school though, I had the strong sense of like head versus heart. Um, like the inner feminine energies versus the outer masculine energies, all like you are sunlight and I moon. I used to get so mad at people, like not all the answers are in your head, a lot of the answers are in your heart. There's wisdom in both. I'm starting to rethink about that. Yeah, so I would really get upset when people in high school would dismiss like the new agey stuff, and this is what I've been circling around recently. I had to trek through the mud a little bit before accepting this wise woman into my life. As I was working through what I'm about to tell you, I realized that it's what I call the divine feminine. And then I realized after thinking about it more that it's really like the wise woman. The world has shown me time and time again that it doesn't want what I am. I wanted to get this out before I started looking up what others meant by divine feminine because I know I've heard that before. So I wrote some notes down and have since looked it up. And that's why, like, it's more the wise woman that I'm talking about here. Not that I have anything against the divine feminine, but it feels like that has like created its own meaning in the world, and that's not what I'm necessarily going for. Um, but anyway, this idea of this strong feminine energy, this energy that's not this stupid little girl. Um, it peeked its head into my life before. And the more and more I'm thinking about it, the more I realize how present it has been in my life. Um, but I guess I just wasn't ready. It all seemed too superficially like I am woman, hear me roar. Or on the other side of it, too, like man hating or like against the patriarchy. I mean, there's definitely a side of that that this touches. Um, this hyper, toxic masculinity. I think that I think this may be part of the cure to that, but it's not like a man-hating thing at all. It's just a recognition of these two sources of knowledge, this feminine wisdom and the masculine intellect. Um, wow, that's really what it is. Um, but in any case, I'm going to go back to my notes here. Uh, I realized that yesterday when I had this epiphany that it's what my I have these playlists um, of songs, and one of them is called Winning, and it has all of these songs in it about women coming into their own. Um, Most recently, it's "Show Yourself" from Frozen 2. I mean the whole song, but there's that part where it's like the mom's like, "Come, my darling, homeward bound." And she's like, I am found. Show yourself, step into that power. And then defying gravity. Um, you know, I'm through accepting limits because someone's told me so. Some things I cannot change, but till I try, I'll never know. I don't know, there's a whole thing in that song about accepting who you are. Um, but then there's this one in Moana that when she's like about to give up, like when she throws the heart of the ocean back into the ocean, and her grandmother shows up, and it has a special place in my heart because that grandmother always reminded me of my grandmother, my nan, and she passed last year of COVID. I'll get more into that in a moment, but in Moana, in that scene, the grandmother comes and says, "Sometimes the world seems against you. The journey may leave a scar." But scars can heal and reveal just where you are. And then she points up to the sky. Um, because in that show, it had to do about like navigating based on seeing, based on understanding the landscape in the sky. Um, but then she says, Moana, listen, do you know who you are? And there's this whole other part then when, Moana accepts it and she like puts her forehead against her grandmother's forehead and says, I will carry you here in my heart. You remind me. Um, and that reminded me that my grandmother, my nan, was the wise woman in my life, and like the gift that she left me. When I was a teenager, she got me this hand carved box, and I don't, maybe I'll plug in pictures of it when I'm editing this video, but it was this hand carved box, and with it came a letter. At the center of the box is a hot air balloon, and it was meant to represent that, like the dichotomy of air and earth. Um, And that thing that I'm really getting to understand now of like that knowledge is from both places. That's why things are really making a lot of sense now. This push and pull of these two extremes. In that box also had a letter to me that I wrote um, when I was 17 in 1999. Um, and it's insane to see that I had that same issue with these dichotomies back then. Um, like I've been so hyper aware of them my entire life. There was a point I think that initially triggered me when I was going to school online. When I finally had gotten myself to sign up, and by the time I jumped in, I realized that after the fact that it was a Christian college, and I was like, okay, whatever, I can still get the classes that I want. If I start over, I'm never going to get in. So, I'm already in. It turned out stuff happened I never actually finished, but whenever the experience that I had was good. I was raised Catholic, but usually when something's called Christian, it means something slightly different. Anyway, there was this philosophy class, um, and this is where I had my mind blown. Um, there was a chapter about Darwin, um, which I thought was a little strange to have in a philosophy class to begin with. But then it's how I realized that I had not realized up until that point that people were living on this planet who not only did not believe in evolution, but thought that to do so was also rejecting God. Okay, hold the phone. These two things cannot exist concurrently. Like I blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. So that took me down a huge rabbit hole. It was at this point where I started watching debates about this. So of course I came across Richard Dawkins, which then put me down this path of atheist content, which there's still a lot of atheist content creators that I watch. I think their stuff is really interesting. And it does really keep me grounded. It helps me practice skepticism. Um, but anyway, it took me down this really scientific path, which I did have an interest in, but not in this way. I then started listening and reading a lot of theoretical physicists or physics. Um, I kept fighting my woo brain against this really solid stuff that like smart people seem to be agreeing on. Um, and so it started to get all mumbled up. I started to conflate things. I was making leaps to the macro that only exist in the micro. I then saw this debate with Deepak Chopra and Sam Harris, the future of God, um, where Harris chastised Chopra for conflating quantum physics with manifestation. And this may have broken me. Um, Again, it goes back to that Moana thing. They have stolen the heart from inside you. Um, and the words Sam Harris, the words he was saying was right. It's absolutely not the same thing. Um, like the double split experiment does not mean that you can like it's not the secret. Not that I was ever really into the secret, but there's still a level of like manifestation that I still think is actually true. Um, anyway, you know, at that moment I was like, Sam Harris is right. Not only do you sound stupid, a naive little girl, if you start bringing your heart into things, um, but it's not something we can agree on. Um, Objective reality has to be based in the things that different people can perform repeatable experiments and get to the same answer. That has to be what we agree on is reality. I mean, ultimately, I might think that reality is like more than that, and I think ultimately it is. I think we just can't. I mean, how I've sort of reconciled this cognitive dissonance in my brain is that we just don't, we can't, we don't have the capacity to understand it. to fully understand it. And there was a certain point in my life where I started like really just accepting that there are things that are unknowable. But I still can't stop myself from feeling this. I just want to float away sometimes. Um, anyway, um, I started getting more, that kind of thought. I was trying to resolve this cognitive dissonance because I can't stand when two ideas are competing in my head and can't align. Um, so I started getting more into theoretical physics. Like I was watching World Science Fair, got a huge like brain crush on Brian Greene. Watched a TED Talk by Garrett Lisi. Was watching a lot of quantum gravity lab stuff where they're doing this stuff with E8 crystalline structures and the shadows of like the fourth dimensional shadow of an eighth dimensional object and under having that make inferences on why the negative and positive charges of things are doing what they're doing, which is like, and it could possibly be explaining quantum entanglement. I mean, all of that is just so interesting to me. And I try really hard to then not conflate it to the back row. I really try hard not to do that. But anyway, while this was all happening, I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Even the scientists are legitimately talking about probabilities and a multiverse. Like scientists are saying that we don't actually know what reality is truly made of, and then that's the thing. That's the thing that's supposed to be solid. It's like the never-ending story. Um, you know, when I was writing this, I realized that that's why the Neverending Story theme song is on my winning playlist. I had thought maybe it was like something to do about how like when that song's playing, he's going after the bullies that threw him in the dumpster. But I realized no, no, it's the whole thing when Neil told the childlike empress at the end, when she was like, you have to name me in order to save Fantasia, and he can't believe that he could affect the story. Is like, it's just a story, and he's screaming out. He was like, no, I have to keep my feet on the ground. Um, and I just made this reference recently. I've been making the reference a lot to like being stuck in the mud like Atreus' horse, and it's like my mind trying to get me there in any way that it can. It's like when I have this thing that I can't resolve, when I'm stuck in life, it's like the universe just is sending me answers, and finally it like plops itself upside my head. And I forgot that if I'm paying attention, it doesn't have to hit me upside the head. It doesn't have to be so painful if I'm paying attention. Anyway, like all of this is going on in the background. I'm living my life. Um, I always thought that I would have this life where I was like a stay-at-home mom. I really had this like kind of 50s kind of household in my head. And I have this husband. It's really, really loving and really scientifically minded husband. Who's actually more of a feminist than I am. He abhors the idea that like there's pre-described gender roles that should ever get applied just because. He'll be who he is. So like talking about the toxic masculinity, he is just like so anti that. He by no means is a pushover though. And in fact, he keeps me really steady. When we were talking about it, when I shared this with him, he said that he feels like he tethers me. And I was like, exactly, exactly. It's like you're like the ropes on the basket of the hot air balloon. It's gotten to the point where my coworkers lovingly laugh when they see him bring me my breakfast in the morning on like our morning Zoom calls. They're not Zoom calls, they're Teams calls, but he does the laundry, he does all the cooking. It's funny. We often say that on the surface, if you were to describe what each of us does in the family unit, the gender roles are just completely reversed. Um, but I'm jumping ahead. Well, all of this science stuff was going on in the background when I was like in that really scientific phase. Um, I was finding myself in a position where I was really getting into my business analyst role at work. I'm starting to be able to, like at the time, I was starting to be able to build queries, like SQL queries and reports, and that is really interesting to me. I understood, like, I had this like natural understanding of relational databases, like extremely well, and the language of SQL. In fact, most computer languages, um, that I would pick up at the time. Like it was like the same thing. It was the same logical sequence, just different syntax. I just had to learn the language. But like all of the statements and how to join the data together, it just was all very natural to me. Um, and people would ask me like, "Where did you learn this? How did you do this?" Because it just seemed like I was performing magic. Um, I didn't really have a good answer. Um, I would always just liken it to Elvis picking up a guitar for the first time. It was like alchemy. Um, Whenever anybody needed a new report or a dashboard or something, um, I just needed them to give me what they were going for. Like, what do you want the end result to be? Um, what questions are you trying to answer? And I would track down the details of where the data lived, and I'd pull it all together, and I did it really quickly, and I was really enjoying it. Um, I did go through a period where I was receiving feedback that I was coming across as like really arrogant, which is a big blind spot for me. I got this book called Thanks for the Feedback, which has really helped me even to this day and to be able to determine which feedback is worth listening to and how to keep an open mind when receiving it. I also read a lot of leadership books on how to effectively work with people. But it was like I liked building those queries, but I didn't necessarily like, well, I guess I did like summarizing it, like coming to the conclusion about it. But presenting those conclusions were, I don't know, it was just coming across very harsh. Go through, but because I'm a sponge, before I knew it, I was on this path where I dug my feet really deep in this career thing. Um, this very tech-centered career. I didn't want to do like data or financial analysis, and that's the thing that I think people were like conflating with what I was doing. I just wanted to make connections in the data and to build systems so that people could easily get to the answers that they needed when they needed them. Um, Without going into all of the boring details, one thing led to another, and now the IT director work. And I do actually really love it. Um, I get to be charged with making sure that the entire company is using tech to make their work lives better and easier, which, funny enough, uh, in that letter that I wrote to myself in '99, I said that I think technology is going to get much cooler and we'll have more leisure time. I go on to say that back in '99, that right after I said that I think tech is cooler and it'll give us more leisure time, I go on to say that it'll give us more time to grow spiritually. It's like I wrote my story. There's a lot in there. I also mention about how I think I'm going to become a cosmic woman. Um, and I reference a horoscope book that I was reading at the time. And again, even saying these things out loud, I learned that people don't respect you when you say things like this. But when I'm otherwise being praised for my authenticity, I have to say it. I have to say it. Otherwise, I'm an imposter. It's another thing my husband has said that he has. And I said, like, have you seen this? Has it been obvious to you what I'm going through? And He did say that it does seem like I'm going through like really bad imposter syndrome lately. Um, Not that I don't think that, like, again, I just love, I need to figure out how to do both. I need to figure out how to balance both. Um, because now my life has done one or the other. I've had periods where I've done one or the other, and I need to find equilibrium. And I feel like I think it's one of the most scariest lessons that I have, like the big boss. I think that's why this particular big boss is particularly scary. And it's probably just arrogance again, but I really do think like this is one of those ones that's going to be a game changer in my life. This is going to be one of those points in my life where I was like, yeah, before this moment, I wasn't using these two things together. And just as I was writing my notes for this yesterday, I was listening to my mellow playlist. The one song is on there by Billy Joel um, that I happened to quote recently when I was answering a question about what's wrong with the world. And one of the things that was a catalyst to get me to think about this. And I actually quoted the same darn song in this letter to myself in 1999. This is the Billy Joel 2000 Year Song. Sometimes I wonder, why are we so blind to fate? Without compassion, there can be no end to hate, no end to sorrow, caused by the same endless fears. Why can't we learn from all we've been through after 2000 years? And then goes on to say there will be miracles after the last war is won. And this next line is the one I had in my letter. Science and poetry rule in the new world to come. Goes on, prophets and angels give us the power to see what an amazing future there can be. I mean, it's a good cry song. Um, anyway, so okay, girl, are you ready? Are you ready yet? Thank goodness that you did go down this winding road because Cosmic Woman. I mean, it's like the shadow side of the mystic is like, this superficial connection to the divine. It's actually what I think the whole point of this Earth School is anyway. We have to go through the motions. We have to feel the things. I don't think there is any other way of experiencing and learning the things. Like, you could read a story, but like it is nothing compared to actually doing. Um, and the actual doing is so painful. But it's why we're here. Anyway, that's a topic for a different video. For right now, I'm just really happy to say that I think I'm ready to start welcoming the wise woman into my life. While all of this was hitting my soul like a freight train, dug my heels in my head, I was like, that's not how the world works. When I screamed out, that's not how the world works. And here's some woo for you. The universe talks back to me. Um, I understand. I understand. It's just my inner voice, probably. But, like, I'm the universe too. So if it's my inner voice, it is the universe talking to me. Like, all goes around in a circle. The universe screamed back to me. Like, when I said, yeah, that's not how the world works, it screamed back. Well, it didn't scream back, but it whispered back, yeah, but the universe does. And then it said divine feminine, which is where I came up with that term. But I like wise woman better. I feel like it's a good, it's palatable to people who don't float off into the ether like I do. Like I do. I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for the ground. But this wise woman, right? But now that I realize that this is what I have to go develop within myself right now, I have to go find it. Now I know what I'm looking for. I can go find it. So as a cursory glance around, I realize it's It's this stoic wisdom. And I think it really can be distilled into the wisdom of the heart versus the intellect of the mind, and that those energies can work together to understand the truth as much as we can in the bodies that we have right now. Let the adventure begin.